Okay, so yesterday where we have stopped, just we discussed something about variables, right? But we haven't seen how we can declare and how we use the variables. But we just discussed about what exactly meant by a variable, right? Let me recap that what exactly we have discussed. Variable is nothing but it's a kind of container or it's named memory location, what we call it as. So generally variables are used for storing the values or storing the objects inside it. Why we need to store? Because we might need to use them in later part of the code. Okay, so if a value is keep repeating multiple times or if the value is keep changing every time, then instead of directly storing or the directly passing the value inside the script, okay, so what we need to do is first we need to store that value, whatever needs to be reused or whatever the value is keep changing. So we need to store that value directly inside the memory, and then wherever you want to use the value, we just have to refer that particular memory. So that memory is called as a variable. Okay, so that's what we have discussed, and we also discussed that so variables are two types. One is a scalar variable and second one is a array variable. Okay, and scalar variable is nothing but when we have only one value to be stored, then use a scalar variable, because scalar variable allows only one value at a time, and a scalar variable can be a constant or can be a dynamic. At the same time, array variable is whenever we need to store the collection of values. It's not a single value, probably whenever we have the collection. Then to store the collection of values, then we use array variables. Then again, array can be a static or dynamic, not in terms of values, in terms of the size of the array. Size is nothing but number of values that an array should accept. That's what the size defines. Okay. So it depends on what you have to define the size first. So when I have 20 values, then you have to define your array size as per that to store the 20 values. When I have 10 values, in your array size should be defined as like that. Then only it accepts this many values. So this size you can make it as fixed. Say okay, now I have 10 values and those 10 values never gonna change. I mean values may change, but the amount of the values, collection of the values won't get changed. Okay, so every time it will be 10 values only, but values may differ. Okay, so value may differ, but the count will be 10 only. Then I can give it as fixed size because the count is not changing. Maximum 10 I am getting every time. But sometimes what happens is I cannot count how many are there, or I cannot give the exact count. Sometimes this time today it is 10, tomorrow it could be 20, day after tomorrow it could be 30 or 40, like that. Then if that is the case, then I cannot give a fixed size to the array. Then what I need to do is I need to make a dynamic array in this case. So dynamic array in a sense, the size can be changed at any moment. Now when I have 10 values, then I can give the array size as per the number of values I have. I will tell you what is the count that what is the size that you have to give. But let us move into arrays first. First, okay, we'll go through the scalar and then come to an array. But before going to that level, just understand the brief about array. So when I have today it is 10 values, tomorrow it could be 15. So my size should be increased as per that. Okay. So now, first let us go with this example and let's understand the scalar variable first. And then we will move into array after understanding the scalar variable thoroughly. Okay. Now, in this context, whatever the string that we do have now, all these strings, okay, this particular part will be constant always. That particular part will be constant. But these team names will be keep changing every time. Today there is one, yesterday there was one value, and today it's a different value. Then what I need to do is, instead of directly passing those values in the script, inside my script, what I am doing is now I'll declare two variables. One is team1, second one is team2. I am declaring two variables. Now in this particular context, I am using only one VBS file. I am not using any class objects or anything. So when I am using only one file, VBS file, public, private or dim won't make any difference. Everything will be accessible throughout, because I'm not creating multiple classes, I'm not using it in multiple files and all. Since I'm using only one file end to end without any class or any functions or anything, then public or private or dim, okay, won't make any difference. So since dim is one global type of defining the variables, I'm using dim. Still you can make that as a public, team1 or team2, or you can make private team1 or team2, like that you can make, no problem. Got what I am saying here? Now what I have done here, I am defining the array, that's called declaration. Whatever I have done there, that's called declaration. What is meant by declaration exactly is registration, that's it. So what you are doing is, whenever you are saying like dim variable, then you are registering the variable with the script, with the program. So whenever you register, then what your program does exactly is, okay, it will take that variable and allocates the memory as per the defined data type. Generally in program language, what happens is, okay, so when you say when you define a variable as a string, okay, so it will take that variable and it allocates some memory for that variable, and the memory type will be string type. Certain bytes of memory it will allocate, so that you can store the value into that. Similarly here also, whenever you declare the variable like this, when the program is being executed, as soon as that line whatever is selected, as soon as that line is executed, it allocates some memory inside it. Okay, so by default the memory value will be empty. It will have empty value inside the memory. Then what you need to do is, once you declare the variable, you need to initiate it. Initiate is nothing but assigning the value. First time assignment of the value is nothing but initiating the variable. So what the process always will be, first, okay, we do the declaration and then we do the initiation of the variable and then we will start using it. Always that will be the process. Now what I have done is, first I have declared in the first line and then I am initiating. Then whatever the teams, team1 is nothing but probably, okay, so team1 is Hyderabad. Then team2 is, okay, so let's say like this, or let's say this. Okay, so I'm just giving team1 and team2. Now whatever the values I have given for team1 and team2, then the same values should be taken here in this particular program. Okay, so now what I should do is, instead of CSK here Hyderabad has come, instead of Bangalore Rajasthan has come. Okay, so what I need to do is, I don't want to pass the values directly here now, because these values have been stored in the variables, right? Then as I told, how you use the variable, you just have to refer that variable wherever you want to use, you just have to refer the variable. And remember that there is one rule whenever you are using a variable name must always should be given without double quote. A variable name or variable should not be enclosed with any double quote. Okay, so now whatever the values, double quote in a sense, that should not be given within double quote. Variable should not be given within double quote. If you see here, value I have given within double quote, but if you look at the variable here, the variable I have not given within double quote, right? Outside double quote I have given. But if you give that value, variable name, within double quote, that will not be considered as a variable. Whatever finds within double quote, that will be considered as a value directly. For numeric, within double quote or without double quote. Numerics you don't need to provide within double quote. Okay, remember that. Now what I am doing is, wherever I need to use team1, just what I am doing here, I am placing team1 there. Instead of passing the value, I am passing the variable name. Getting what I am saying here? Then wherever I want to use team2, then I'll say team2 1. Sorry, it should be team2. Okay, so team 2. Now, is it right whatever I have written? I defined the variable in my program. Instead of writing the value directly, I am writing the variable name. When I write the variable name in my program, which means that I am referring the variable. So wherever I am referring the variable in my program while executing it, then that variable name will be replaced by the value while executing. Okay, so that's what I have done. I referred the variable name there. But what I have written, is it right? No. See now, if you write like this, what happens? If you write like this, what happens exactly is, so what it says, instead of team 1, the name of the team is supposed to come there. But it is still giving us team 1 only, team 1 and team 2. Why it is? Because where this team 1 and team 2 is found here, so the team 1 and team 2 we have given within double quote, right? So when we have given within double quote, those are considered as a values only, not the variables. So when it is considering it as a value, then the same value will be displayed there. So what should I do now? We have to eliminate the double quote. Instead of eliminating the double quote, we have to take them outside double quote. So what you need to do is, whatever the constant values supposed to be there in the string, I am giving those constant values within the double quote. So now this is one constant value. So I have given that value within double quote, and this and also constant, right? And also constant. So and also I have given within double quote. So a hard-coded value, a variable, hard-coded value and a variable. Like that I have placed that. This also. And here again. Now as I told earlier, we have given outside the double quote. Right? So when I have given outside double quote, whenever I am executing the program, what should happen? Those variables should be replaced by the values whatever we have stored in that. Right? Now, what's happening? What is error here? Expected end of statement. What does it mean? Whenever you get the expected end of statement error in VBScript, which means that you have made some syntax error. Okay, so whenever you get an error, first only thing what you have to understand is, look at the error section there. Expected, that gives you the information. Then you look at the line number. What is the line number there? Line number 8. So in line number 8 we have got certain error, and let's understand what exactly that error is. Here. So this is where we have made the syntax error. But probably since you are doing very first time, you may not be able to understand what exactly the syntax error we have made. Then let me explain here. See what we are trying to do there. We are trying to make one complete sentence. Right? We are trying to make a sentence. Then how we are trying to make that? By grouping some of the values, right? It's not only one value. So there are 4 values in that. What are they? This is one value. This is second value, even though I have given the variable, but the value I am giving through the variable. Right? Now, this is another value. And this is another value. So, what I am doing here, I am making a sentence or I am making a statement by grouping multiple values. Right? So when it is a single value, then it worked, it displayed the message for me. But now when I grouped multiple values as a single statement, it is giving the error. Then what is the wrong in that? Yeah, wrong is when you are grouping the values as a single statement, you should not place them next to next like that directly how we have written there. There is certain process. Whenever you want to group the values as a single statement or a single string, we can call it as. So whenever you are grouping the values as a single string or a statement, we have to follow certain process. That grouping is named as concatenation. What we call it as concatenation. Remember that. So what we are doing there, we are concatenating some values to make a single statement or to make a single string. Then when you are concatenating, instead of writing next to next like this, there is one operator that you must have to place in between. There is a operator which you must have to place in between the values, whatever the values that you are grouping. Whenever you are appending a value to the existing statement or one value, you have to place one operator in between. That is called concatenation operator, we call it as. So whenever you are concatenating the values, you must have to place that concatenation operator in between. Then that concatenation operator is called as ampersand. Ampersand is a concatenation operator here. So what you have to do is, whenever you are grouping the values, for each value, in between each value, you don't need to give for very first value, beginning of the first value, end of last value, you should not give. Okay. So when in between the values, you must have to give the concatenation operator. So what I am doing now, that's it. You should not give beginning of first value, should not give end of last value. In between only you need to give. Then here, getting what I am saying here? Now let's see how exactly it executes. Now can you see the value is coming? Wherever I have used team 1, then Hyderabad is coming. Wherever I have used team 2, Rajasthan is coming. Team 2. Now assume that team 2 has been changed. Team 2 has been changed. So I have used team 2 in multiple places, right? But I don't need to understand where I have used and all. I don't need to worry about, okay, so I might have used this value maybe for 10 times or maybe for 20 times. I don't know, okay, I might have used in various lines of code. I don't know where and all I have used. But I still don't need to worry about that. The reason, because now how I am passing the value, I am not passing the value directly inside my program. I have not placed the value directly inside the program. What I have done here, I created a memory, then in my program I am just referring to that memory. So later whenever you are changing the value, you don't need to understand where and all you have referred. You directly go to the memory where you have initiated that, you just update the value there. Once you update the value in that memory, then wherever you have referred in your program later, wherever you have referred. So that updated value will be taken automatically. If you have referred 100 times, then all 100 times it will take the updated value. Now let's see what happens. You can see that wherever I have used team 2, you can see that. Now assume that team 1 has changed. I am not doing anything in my program. I am not doing any change in my program. Where I am doing the change? Only in the variable. So since I have referred the same variable in other lines, then it is taking the updated value. If I execute now, you can see that wherever I have used team 1, then so the value is coming. This is the exact use of a variable. So what kind of variable this is? A scalar variable, because I am giving only one value to that. Okay. So now what we have done exactly is, first we have declared the variable and then we have initiated the variables and then we started using them in our program. This is how the process will be always. But yesterday we made one point, if you remember or not. What is that? In the last point was, in VBScript, declaration of the variable is optional, is not a mandatory thing. But when you are using other programming languages like .NET, Java or other languages, then this must be the process. You must have to declare, then initiate and then use it. But in VBScript, declaration is not a mandatory activity that needs to be performed. It's not a mandatory activity. Then what I will do is here, I'm taking the declaration out. Now I'm not declaring the variable. What I have done, I directly initiated that variable. I directly initiated the variable. And let's see whether it will work or not. It's working. You can see the values are being taken. Right? Now how exactly it works is here, whenever you are executing the program, whatever the string value you have given without double quote, as soon as it finds a value without double quote except numeric, remember numerics will not be considered as variable names. Whenever it finds alphanumeric or alpha characters without a double quote, then what VBScript considers is immediately on the spot, whenever it finds the value in your program, it will consider that as a variable immediately, and then on the spot it will allocate some memory. So that means you don't need to register first and then use it. As soon as you started using them while executing the program, when VBScript finds any value without double quote, on the spot it thinks that yeah, you have used a variable there. There itself it will think that okay, you have used a variable. Then on the spot it allocates some memory, and then if you have assigned any value to that variable, that value will be placed into that memory. Getting what I am saying here? So that means that okay, so VBScript is sharp enough to consider a variable on the spot. You don't need to register them. But in other languages, what we need to do is, if you declare in the beginning, if you register them in the beginning of the code or before you are using them, then only it can recognize those variables. Otherwise, it cannot recognize the variables. This is in other language. But when it comes to the VBScript, then you don't need to declare that. Whenever it finds a value without double quote, then VBScript can recognize that value as a variable immediately. On the spot, it will consider that as a variable. On the spot, it will allocate the memory, and then the value, whatever you have given there, value will be passed into that. So VBScript is sharp enough in that case. So this is one advantage, and this is a disadvantage too. Then what is the advantage here with this is, okay, when I need to use maybe 20 variables or 30 variables, then if I declare those many variables, my script looks very exhaustive. Okay, when you are writing the huge amount of program, yesterday we have seen some form, right? So in that form, what happened was, we had around 10 to 15 fields we had. Then if you use one variable for one field, then okay, you have to declare 15 fields and then use it. My script, script looks very exhaustive when when any user sees this many variables. So in this case, what you need to do is, okay, since the variable count is going huge, then let me avoid some variable declaration. So I will directly use them, so that I can avoid some lines of code and the script looks simple. That is one advantage of doing like this. But what is the disadvantage here? What is the disadvantage here? Disadvantage is here, what I have done is, while writing my program, I misspelled one of the variable. I misspelled one of the variable here by mistake. Okay, what happens now when you misspell the variable? First value is coming. What's coming there? An empty value is coming. What happened exactly? What happened exactly here is, as I told, whenever it finds whenever it finds a string value without a double quote, on the spot it will consider as a variable, and then it will allocate the memory. What is the default value in that memory? Empty. Right? Now, whenever it executes the 10th line of code, so this variable, this is one variable. VBScript will not consider that as a misspelled variable. It will not consider. Since okay, that is something new, it has come there, then that will be considered as a new variable instead of considering that as a spelling mistake. It will consider that as a new variable. Then since okay, it's a new variable, by default empty value will be placed in that. Since that variable was not initiated earlier, then empty value has been passed to the string. Okay, since this is only just 3 lines of code, you can easily find out that there is a misspell in that. But assume that I have written maybe 150 lines of code and I'm executing the program, and my program is dealing with certain application and all. While executing the program, I don't need to do anything there. What I will do, I will execute the program in one system. In my system, I will be doing other work. Then at the end, what I will do is, I will just validate the final result. I don't observe the line by line of code while it is being executed. Okay. So now in that case, if you have misspelled some of the variables like this, then empty values will be passed to the application. Then application will be failed and you will get a wrong output. Right? Then confusion starts now. Probably my logic is right. Whatever the logic I have written, whatever the methods I have used, everything is perfect there. But why my script is failing? Confusion starts, right? Then what you need to do now? You need to look at line by line and see why exactly it went wrong. Then sometimes when you have used a lot of variables, it will be very difficult for us to find out the misspelled variable. So when you don't declare the variable, this is what happens. By mistake, if you have done any spelling mistake, for any of the variable, VBScript will not consider that as a spelling mistake or misspelled variable. What VBScript will consider is, it will consider that as a new variable. User used a new variable here. Let me allocate some memory and pass the empty value into that. That's what VBScript will consider. So this is the drawback. It leads to a lot of confusion, right? And when you start confusing, then obviously you spend a lot of time to understand that program. This should not happen. This is the reason what we have to do is, we should ask our VBScript, say that, okay, even though declaration of variable is not mandatory by nature of VBScript, declaration of variable is not a mandatory. So even though your nature is like this, but don't allow any variable. Don't allow any variable when the variable is not registered before, when the variable is not declared before. Okay, that means we have to change the nature of the VBScript wherever we need. Then how do we do that? Okay, to do that, we have a statement called option explicit. One statement in VBScript that is called option explicit. So what that statement does exactly is, it will make the variable declaration is mandatory. Whenever you use option explicit, then variable declaration will become as a mandatory activity that user must have to perform. Wherever in whatever the program that option explicit is used, then in that program no variable will be allowed when it is not declared. That is what the use of option explicit. Write down the interview question for this. Interview question is, how do you make the variable declaration is mandatory, or what is the use of option explicit? Okay, so what is the use of option explicit, or what is the how do you make the variable declaration is mandatory? Then see, what I am doing here is, I am using option explicit. And whatever the variables that I want to use, team1 and team2, I have declared. Okay. Then, so I'm using team 1 and team 2, and somewhere I just misspelled the variable. Then let's see what happens. First line is executed, and when it comes to the second line, and what happens here? Variable is undefined, team 21. So whatever the variable I have not declared and used in my program, not declared but used in my program, it found that variable. So that variable was not registered earlier, so it's illegal to use that variable. Then it is giving. So this variable is not declared, or this variable is not defined earlier, so I can't allow you to use this variable. You must have to stop the execution here and go and correct this, and then only I will allow you to execute. Right? This is the use of option explicit. Then what I will do now, then I can correct my mistake, and then I will execute my program. It should work now. But if you don't use option explicit, if you don't use option explicit, I just commented out. Control M is a shortcut key to comment, or you can just add a single quote at beginning of the line to comment out. I will come to these comments little later, not now. Now option explicit is commented out. When any line is commented, then that line will not be executed. That line will not be considered as a part of program while executing. See? Now it is taking that variable, right? It's not giving the error. So wherever I misspelled the variable, an empty value is being passed in that place, because that is considering on the spot on that line, it is considering that as a variable, so that empty value is being passed there. Okay. So now as per the standard, whenever you are writing the programs as per the standard, this is one of the standard that you have to define. As per the standard, first you have to use option explicit, and then make declare all the variables, whatever the variables you are going to use, and then use them. So this is one of the scripting standard. Probably for the bad people, this is one of the question also, what kind of standards that you follow in your program is this. Okay. Now remember that whenever you are using option explicit, there is a rule set here for option explicit. The rule is that statement, option explicit statement, should be written at very first line of valid code. Option explicit must be placed at very first line of valid code. What does it mean? Valid code or invalid code. What is that? Valid code, in a sense, the line of code which is not commented is a valid one. That line will be executed. But the lines which are commented, those are invalid. That means while executing the program, all those commented lines will be ignored. Those will not be considered as part of program while executing. So before option explicit, no uncommented line should be placed. You can have a number of commented lines before option explicit, fine, but no uncommented line must be placed there, or should be placed. No uncommented line should be placed. Then let us understand this statement. Okay. Now what I am doing is, here say I am using a small message box. Before also I am just giving some value there, just test. That means display the message as test here. Now what it is giving? It's giving an error saying that expected end of statement, expected statement. Then where? Line number 3. So line number 3, let's come here. This is line number 3. So it's not able to understand, it's not able to recognize the option explicit there. That's the reason it's throwing the error. Now let me do one thing. I'm commenting that message box. Now option explicit is the very first line of the valid code. Before that there are some uncommented lines. Let it be, no problem. Those lines will not be considered as part of program when it is commented. Right? So now let's see whether it will execute or not. It's executing now. Right? So this is option explicit. So whenever you are declaring the variable, whenever you are using option explicit, then make sure that that option explicit is given as very first line of your code. But before that, commented lines can be there, but no uncommented line should be placed before that option explicit. Okay, you got this point? Very, very important to understand. Okay, so this is one of the scripting standard that you must have to follow. Okay, now, so when it comes to the variable, again, I told 2 points. A variable can be a constant or can be a dynamic, Then what is meant by constant and what is meant by dynamic here? Now, let's say one thing. Whatever the values that I have given here in the beginning of the program while initiating those variables, those values, when the variable is dynamic, those values can be updated in between the program. Now, let's say here, team2, what is the initial value? KKR. Then, after executing 1 or 2 lines of code, depends on certain condition, value has been updated due to certain, based on certain conditions or certain situations, value has been updated. That's called dynamic. So you can update the variable value in between the program, not only once, n number of times you can update. Now if I execute that, you can see the latest value after executing that line, wherever I have changed the value, then the latest value has been taken. It will always take the latest value only. So that's what dynamic means for. So when you make a variable as dynamic, then the variable value can be updated anywhere in the program. Not only once, you can update that value n number of times. Whenever you declare the variable by using public or private or dim, whenever you declare the variables by using any of these 3 statements, then the variable will be dynamic. The variable will be dynamic. And now, which one we have used here to declare the variable? Dim. So since we have used dim, then variable is dynamic. Now what I need is, whatever the values that I am giving in the beginning while initiating, those values should not be changed in between the program. Only at initiation, whatever the values I have given at initiation, only those values must be taken throughout the program. If somebody tries to change the value in between can you change the team while match is happening? No, you cannot do that. That is illegal. So whatever the team names I announced in the beginning of the match, then the same team names, even the first 11 members in the team, those are constant, right? Whatever the names I assign, I give in the beginning of the match, then those names should be throughout the match. In between the match, I cannot change the team member names, right? You getting what I am saying here? Now the same, that means that the names are being constant. Once I give in the beginning, then those names must be constant throughout the match, right? That means in that particular match, it has to be constant. Similarly here, whatever the variables I am using and whatever the values I am assigning in the beginning of the program, those values are constant here. In between the program, nobody should be able to change the values of those variables. That's what making the constant meant for. Now, how can I make the variables as constant? Then, we have seen one more type of declaration. We have seen three types now: dim, public, private. Now, one more type of declaration is constant. I told CONST. So, to make the variable as constant, you have to declare that variable using constant statement. Okay. Now, how we can declare the variable by using constant statement is like this. That's how you make the variable as constant, how you declare. Now, if you observe one thing here, how I have declared team1 by using dim. When I declared the variable by using dim, declaration happened in one place, in one line. Initiation happened in different line, right? So registration happened in one place, declaration happened in different place. But when I used constant statement there to declare the variable, if you see that I have declared the variable and assigned the value in the same line. That's how it has to be. It is mandatory. When you are using constant statement, then declaration and initiation should happen in the same line. Okay, whenever you are declaring, at the time of declaration only, you have to provide the value to that. But this is not applicable for dim, public, private. So when you are using other three statements, you can declare variable in one place and initiate the variables in a different place. But when you are using constant, declaration and initiation should happen at the same time. Okay. So now let's see what happens. I made the variable as constant, right? Team2 is a constant now. Just come here. Then whenever I try to change the value there, team2, what is the error here? Illegal assignment, line number 13. What is that illegal here? Line number 13. Right? So this is what the error is. Illegal assignment. So whatever highlighted there, that is illegal. Why? Because variable is made as constant. So when the variable is made as constant, you cannot change the value. Okay? Got what I am saying here? So that's what constant and dynamic meant for. Then, so there is one more question here. I said, okay, dim, you can declare variable in one place and initiate in another place, right? But while using dim or public also, you can declare the variable and initiate the variable in the same line. You can do it in the same line. How that can be done is not like constant. After declaration, use colon and then say same, again use same variable equals to so and so. Dim, a variable name, colon, again variable name equals to like this. This is just, it's not mandatory to do that, but this is one of the interview question. How can you declare and initiate the variable in the same line when you are using dim or public? Then that is a syntax. But most commonly how we use is, okay, first we declare the variable in the beginning and then we initiate the variable like this. Now if I do the same thing for constant, if I do the same thing for constant, now using constant also I declared the variable in one place and initiated the variable in different place as like dim. Let's see what happens when I execute that. it says that line number 5. What it is saying here? What it is saying? Expected equal to. Whenever it says that error, that means that it is expecting some value to be assigned for that variable. So whenever you are declaring a variable using constant, make sure that you give the value at the time of declaration only. If you say that no, I will declare in one place and I will give value in a different place, no, that's not accepted here. Okay. Okay, getting what I am saying here? So this is how variables can be declared and variables can be used. Whenever you are using variables in your program, then make sure that those variables will be given outside double quote, and whenever you are concatenating the values or whenever you are grouping the values as a single statement or the single string, then whenever you are grouping the values, in between the values you have to make one, or you have to place one operator called concatenation operator. That's called ampersand. Whatever we have given there, that's called ampersand. Ampersand is a concatenation operator. Probably in other languages you may use double ampersand. Okay, so in some of the languages you use double ampersand to concatenate the values. Here it is only one. Okay, fine. Now there are few things that you need to remember while declaring the variable. Clear the variable concept, how exactly we use the variable, and we are going to use many more variables while writing the programs. Okay, so if you have any little confusion, then that is fine, that will be clarified, or you can ask me, no problem. Right, so this is not a valid here. Then what I am doing is doing this. Okay, that's a valid now. And this again, since team2 is a constant, okay, so now that is a valid program, whatever we have written. And a few things that what you need to remember while using the variables. The first one, what you need to understand is a variable name can be alpha character, can be a string with only alpha characters, or can be alphanumeric. A variable can be only alpha characters or alphanumerics. Then when you say team1 here, team is alpha characters, 1 is a numeric value, right? So it can be alphanumeric, or it can be just only alpha characters. And one more is variable name will not accept any special characters except underscore. Underscore is only separator that we do have in the name, which means that using like this, declaring like this is valid. Team underscore 1, that is valid. A variable name can be defined in that way, but no other special characters will be allowed. Then if you say this, it's invalid name. Variable name cannot be defined using like that, or any special character whatever you place in between is not valid. A variable name cannot be like that. So a variable name can be alpha or alphanumeric, and underscore can be placed in between in case required, except underscore, no other, including space also it will not allow. No space, no at or no dot or any other characters. Okay, in the name. And one more is a variable name can be minimum one character length. A name, not the value. A variable name can be minimum one line. That means that a variable name can be like this: dim A or dim B. So those A and B are variables here. So what is the length of that particular name? Only one character, right? So a variable name can be minimum one line of character, sorry, one character length. Name can be minimum one character length, maximum 255 character length. A variable name can be maximum 250, but we don't declare that much lengthy variable, 255 characters name. But the maximum it is 255 characters, minimum one character length or maximum 255 character length. A variable name can be. And this is not applicable for value. Okay. So when it comes to the value, we can say entire page string can be placed in the variable. So that means you can place maybe 20 lines, 30 lines of string also you can place in one variable. For values, no limit in the length. Only for the names we have the length limit. Okay. This is third point that you need to remember. And fourth point is a variable name should not be duplicated within the scope. The point is a variable name should not be duplicated within the scope. Then there is something new here. What is that? Scope. Scope is something new that you are hearing. What is meant by scope here? Generally, scope defines the accessibility level of the variable. Okay, I'll tell you what exactly the scope is here. Don't get any confusion. I'm just trying to write some function. I'll say function So this is how generally we make the functions inside the program. Functions are nothing but to define the methods and all. We use the functions. Let me comment out this program. Now I have created two functions here. Okay. So two functions, those are called procedures. Okay. So I have created two procedures here where I have declared the variable team1 here outside the procedure, outside all the procedures, right? Whenever you declare a variable outside all the functions, outside all the procedures, then the variable can be a global variable. The scope is global here. When the scope is global, what does it mean? That variable can be accessed in any function, whatever you have written within that program. Now, I have declared the variable outside all the procedures, right? I have not declared anything inside. So, now, let me do one thing. I am displaying that variable inside the procedure. Then, let me do one thing. Let me call the procedure. Okay. So whenever I call the procedure, it will execute that particular procedure or function. Now, 2 times it is displaying the message box. Why it is 2 times? Because I used the same value in both the functions. So whatever the value I have assigned to this team1, that value is being taken inside the procedures also. This is what global meant for. When you declare a variable outside those procedures, then you can use that variable outside the procedure or inside the procedure, wherever you want, because it will become as a global. Then now what I will do is, what I have done here, with the same name, I have declared one more variable, but where this time? Inside the procedure. Now I have got 2 variables with the same name, but earlier I told you cannot duplicate the names, right? But just complete the statement here. You cannot declare the duplicate variables. That means you cannot declare a variable with the same name within the scope I told. But now the scope is different in this case. When you say dim function 1, sorry, dim team 1, which is there at 4th line, that is outside the function procedures. That means it is global variable. But now the one which is placed at 22nd line, this one, where I have declared inside the procedure, that is now local. That's called as local. Whatever the variables you declare inside the procedures, then those will become as local variables. So you can have the same name for global and local, but you cannot have same name for two global variables, two local variables. Same name you cannot use for any two local variables, any two global variables. What I have done is legal. What I have done is legal here. Okay, so if I do that, if I execute now, let's see whether it will consider or not. It is showing it as empty. You know why it is showing empty? Because this is the local variable, right? For which variable I have assigned the value? Outside procedure only I have assigned the value. That will become as global. I have assigned the value to the global variable. But I have declared one variable inside the procedure. This is local variable actually. Now, whenever I use that variable inside the same procedure will prefer to the local variable always. So when it is displaying the local variable, right? So I have not assigned any value to the local variable here. So that's the reason it is displaying as empty. You will understand this. We have one concept called creating user-defined functions, right? So there will, I will will come back to this and I will explain you thoroughly. But for now, just understand only the scope. It is not giving me any error. It is taking, but only thing is it is displaying empty value. But it is considering that as a new variable, right? Same thing what I will do now is, what I am doing, within the same scope, I am declaring one more variable. Let's see what happens now. Name redefined. What is the line? Line number 5. Why? Because there are two variables with the same name. Where global. Local, we have got one more, but that is okay. You can have the same name for one local variable and one global variable. But as per the standard, we should not do like that. When you say standard, right, then variable names must be unique no matter of the scope. Okay? Because sometimes many people do that mistake. They will define one global variable and inside they will define one more variable. They will give the same name. What they will do is later, inside the procedure only, they will allocate the value for the variable. So when you allocate the value or when you assign the value within the procedure, by default it will prefer to the local variable only. Now after executing the function, they will try to use the same value in some other procedure or outside the function. But outside the function, that value will not come. The reason because they have assigned the value to the local variable, not to the global variable. Many people do this mistake. One of the most common mistake that people do. They will give the same variable for global, same name for global and local. When used inside the procedure, then procedure will directly prefer to the local. It will not take the global when you have same value for both. So whatever the changes or whatever the values you assign, whatever the changes that you make to the variable, that is only for the local. But what people complain is, no, okay, I have declared the variable as global and I have used that variable inside the function, but that value is not coming outside. How it will come? Because you made one more local variable inside, you have assigned to the local, not to the global. So even though it is allowing one global and one local with the same name, but never use that. That is not a standard to use. Because of this, confusions will happen. So make always variable name as unique, no matter of it's a global or it is local, so that you can avoid all this kind of confusions. Okay. So now whenever you say this variable, right, team 1, now is it legal or illegal? It's still legal. The reason because even though it is one more local variable, but where I have declared in a different procedure, right? Scope is different here. Scope of this variable is this function. Scope of this variable is this function. So it's in a different procedure. So that is still legal. But if I declare one more here, that is illegal. Is that legal or illegal? Illegal. Even the case is different, little different, but still, as I told, variable names are not case sensitive. Any case we can define. So both the variables are same here. Getting what I'm saying? So you should not make the variable names as duplicate within the scope. Even though you can make the duplicate in different scope, but still don't do that. That is not a standard. Okay? So whenever you are using the variables, you have to remember this kind of things. Whenever if you consider that a variable declaration, a variable must be constant, whatever the value which we have given while initiating, the same value should be carried throughout, then make that variable as constant. But if we say that no, variable can be dynamic, I can change the value, or anybody can change the value in between, or my program can change the value in between, then declare that variable as a dim or public or private, no problem. But in this particular context, public, private or dim won't make any difference. Okay, so later we will find the difference for this. Okay, so this is the concept of variable, how we use the variable, scalar variable. Okay, clear? So you must be very clear on this, because this is one of the things, variables are the things which no matter what program you write, every day you will be using it. Any program, whatever the program, it's simple program or it's complex program, any program that you write, variables are mandatory things to be used, because in any program, values, you must have to pass the values and all, right? Then whenever you are passing the values, how we pass? Through the variables most of the times. But one more thing what I have done here is, the values whatever I am taking here, the values directly I am passing again inside the program. So to modify those values, again I need to open the program and then I need to change, right? So I need to open the file again to update the values inside that. But in real, that also should not happen. Generally what we do is, whatever the values that will be changing, right, I can define those values in my one Excel, or I can define those values, place those values in an external notepad file, or in a database, or in an Excel file, or some XML file, somewhere I can place, and I can read the values from there to my program. But that is too far for us for now. But since we are just beginning, right, we are beginners, so I'm not telling that directly, I'm passing the value here. But later we are going to update this. We can read the values from external. So you can just store in Excel and you can just run the program. What my program should do, whatever the values are stored in the Excel, those values should be taken. Tomorrow, in case if any value need to be changed, I don't need to open this program. Open this Excel file, update the values. So when I run the program should take the updated values only. Okay. So that we have the concepts like reading the data from, or working with files, or working with Excel and all. We have that concept, right? Working with the database. Okay. So that time we will discuss about this. Okay. So we will stop here today, and tomorrow we will discuss about arrays. How exactly we can use arrays, types of arrays that we do have, and how we can use them in our programs. How we can declare the arrays, and how we can store the values as a collection. How we can retrieve and all. Clear this thing? Fine.